that perhaps Reagan only loved Nancy more than the SDI. And that's why we were in trouble. So after that meeting in Reykjavik, the US delegation made a statement that the negotiations failed. I, however, held a press conference where 1,000 reporters from around the world were present. And I still remember it. When I look at you, I remember how I entered that room with 1,000 reporters. All of them rose when I entered. And they looked very grim, because they had been told that President Reagan and Secretary of State Schultz had said that the Reykjavik talks had been a failure. Well, I told them everything that had happened. Glasnost was used 100%. And I said, these talks were not a failure, they were a breakthrough, because we looked over the horizon. And it means that we can reach an agreement even on such very difficult issues. So I think that Reykjavik and the agreements that followed was a great accomplishment, was a great achievement. And I pay tribute to President Reagan, too. I remember I talked to President Bush when he was vice president, and he went to see me off at the airport after my first visit to Washington. And Vice President Bush said, it's very important that what has been done with President Reagan, because it would have been a lot more difficult, hardly possible, to do it with another president. He also said that if I become president, I will continue this policy. And so we were in the same car as he was going to see me off at the airport, and we had a very good discussion. Later, however, for almost a year, the new president, President Bush, and Secretary Baker took a long time to rethink the policy. Well, I think that they were in favor of the policy that started under Reagan, but they wanted to pursue that policy with their own proposals. And so that kind of pause was perhaps justified, even though at that time I was wondering. And in 1989 at Malta, we agreed, or stated, that the Cold War was over and that our two countries no longer regard each other as enemies. That sounds simple. But we started a discussion about how we would cooperate in the world, how we would cooperate in building a new world order. And so this was opening the way to something really new. But then, of course, later the scenario was different. But that's a different subject.
You had these famous presidents, Bush and Reagan, and there was a new era of trust between the United States and the Soviet Union. What about those men allowed you to forge a relationship where you trusted one another, where your predecessors had not? There seemed to be genuine chemistry between you and those men that seemed to transcend the bad feeling between our countries.
По-моему, от многих меня отличало то, что я говорил и делал одно и то же.
Well, I think that perhaps one thing was important. I was different from the predecessors because I said and did the same thing.
И у меня не было такого, что я говорю публично или на переговорах перед прессой.
It wasn't like I say something publicly or at the negotiations or to the media and then do something different.
Кстати, Джордж Буш,
And by the way, George Bush said something in his book or in a conversation. He said Gorbachev was a difficult negotiator. It was difficult to reach agreement, but we knew that if we reach an agreement with him, he will fulfill it. And that is the only basis for trust. And when there is trust, then any issue can be resolved.
You mentioned Margaret Thatcher, who said of you.
But if you think that I attribute all of it to myself, no, that's not true. There are two sides in all negotiations, and negotiations are always a difficult process, sometimes an agonizing process, particularly when it's negotiations between the leaders of countries like the Soviet Union and the United States. However, we did it.
We did indeed.
I only regret that the opportunities that were opened have not been fully used later.
When we think of history, we look at history through the lenses of our own country. And when we think of Reagan, we often think of him standing at the Brandenburg Gate saying, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." What was your response when President Reagan made that statement?
Вы знаете, я обратил внимание, когда
Well, it's interesting. It's really something I noticed.
Майкл, сын Рейгана,
And that was when I had a similar interview with Michael Reagan on the West Coast. He is the son of President Reagan. And we had three such discussions where he was asking questions about the years during which Reagan and Gorbachev worked together. And this question was asked. So, what was your reaction, people ask, to that remark, to that statement? And I say, perhaps I will disappoint you, but what I'm saying is true. Actually, we did not attach any importance or a lot of importance to that statement. Not at all. And I said, you know, we were very well aware that the president had another profession as an actor, and so but again, nevertheless, we worked together and we moved forward. Secretary Schultz, 4 or 5 years ago, visited our country was in Moscow on some business, and he wanted to meet me, and of course I was more than happy to see him.